Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. And a big thank you to Tela for doing this first mentor workshop on AI. I am really, really honored that she's here, and this is an awesome opportunity for us in a small group setting to learn from her and share resources and get questions answered. So please feel free to pop questions in the chat. That's the whole benefit and the whole idea behind doing this small group workshop format. So, if you don't know Tila already, you've seen her all over in industry press on AI. She is a leading expert. She's speaking at every conference, on every AI session. And I was lucky enough with some of you also here on this call to see her present at the WEW retreat last fall. And what she showed in action just really emphasized what we had been hearing for years, really, which is this is coming and it's going to change things drastically. So, as part of our mission here at Athena's Council, I'm really excited to have her here and to host this discussion because it will enable us to differentiate ourselves in the workplace. This skill and an understanding of the technology is what is really going to set us apart. And so Tila has been in the industry like with mortgage technology, solving mortgage technology problems for 25 years. You saw on the slide there that, let's see, she's the CEO and CTO of Phoenix First and the COO and co-founder of PhoenixTeam. So she's worked with a lot of lenders on this issue, knows what people are doing. And thanks, Tila. I'm going to mute myself and let you kind of take it away. But please, questions, pop it into the chat. And then at the end, we'll also have some time for Q&A. So thanks, Tila.
No, thank you. And thanks everybody for being here. I feel like there's obviously a lot of powerhouse knowledge on the call. So I feel like I'm amongst friends. So I won't, bore you with all the details in terms of where where I am, because I think Molly already did that. But I did want to make sure, since I've met with some of you before, and I don't want to kind of retread the same ground, I thought maybe we could start with each of you. And I have a little visual. Some of you have seen this visual before. Do you guys see my screen? Oh, no, hold on. I got to figure out how to use Google Meets. Okay. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay, so let's maybe get to know each other a little bit. And this will help me. I have picked out some materials for today, but I want to make sure that they're responsive to where everybody's kind of already at, and wherever you're at is fine. So if we could just, maybe we can go popcorn style. Start, anybody can go first, but where are each of you on your journey? And I like to use this visual. So the ship is our journey, and then there's little numbered circles around each of the different kind of personas or people who are on the journey, right? Some of us are on the boat, some of us are off the boat, some of us are chasing the boat, some of us are swabbing the deck. So anybody can go, and there's no wrong answers. I had one person tell me once that they were 20, which I thought was really bold. And they did that in front of their boss. And I thought, wow, that's impressive. Like you all right, you go with yourself. So there's no wrong answers. Anybody can start. The first person I see is Leslie, that's the first person I see that's not Molly.
All right. I am on the boat somewhere. I kind of just stepped on the boat. I had seen your presentation at the WEW, and so I learned a whole lot there. And I'll use it, just kind of with like wordsmithing, and not a whole lot else. So
Okay. So would you say You're number 7, maybe? Feels sort of 70.
I'm looking on my phone, so this is kind of small.
Oh,
trying
I'm
to see
sorry.
where. That's all good. That's all good. I'm probably number 7.
7's a good one. Let's see. Dana Lynn is the next person, little window that I see.
Yeah,
Hi,
you
Dana
can
Lynn.
shorten it to Dana. Hi, Tela.
Hi, Dana.
I'm definitely on the boat. I'm using AI every day, right? I'm
Yeah.
using it for some work efficiencies to move emails around. I use it for proofing virtually any of the writing that I'm doing. I use it to build out fun graphics, and I use it to do all of my social media posting, or the majority of my social media posting. From a scheduling and a strategy perspective of, kind of just building a content wheel of things that I can go to. So I'm all in. I just know that there's just so, like, I'm only, scratching the little iceberg of it.
Yeah, well, the good news is that one of the gentlemen that I follow, he's a guy named Nathaniel Whitmore, and he does something called the AI Brief. It used to be the daily AI Brief, and he did a retrospective on 24. And what he said was that the organizations that are actually the furthest ahead feel the furthest behind, which I thought was a really it was very helpful and validating, because I always feel like I'm number 12. Like, hey, there's the boat, and I'm trying to keep up. So that's a great place to be. And let's see, Allison was the next window that I see.
Looking at this, I think I'm number 5. He's climbing the scaffolding, and I think I understand that it can serve as a framework for things that I'm working on. But if I pull out an outline, if I've got something that's very long, I had to read a 144-page document the other day, and I asked ChatGPT to summarize it for me. And then once it summarized it, I went back to the table of contents and I saw what it saw.
Yeah.
So I use it as a framework. I think I'm climbing the scaffolding.
Love it. Cindy was next on the next square here.
I am number 4. I have one arm holding on for dear life. So I have not used it a lot. I have not used it personally for work a lot. I will say that I've used it in my personal life in helping my son with writing papers for college on topics that I had no clue. But because GPT told me what it was, he thinks I'm smart. So that's what I've used it for. But that's me holding on for dear life, hoping that the fingernails have like clawed into the wood.
That's awesome. Liz, I see you next.
Absolutely. I love this visual, by the way. This is fantastic. I definitely think I'm on the boat. I like number 8. I use AI definitely in a lot of ways that other folks were saying, but I have clients that either want to or are implementing them. And I feel like a lot of times I say, hold on, before we can go forward, we got to get these things in order so you are ready to. So feel like a lot of times I'm back there cleaning things up, saying, hey guys, we can move forward. This is great, but let's make sure that we're ready to go forward before we put all of our energy there. So I kind of like that visual a lot.
Love it. Let's see. And then there's others, unfortunately. Anybody else can go, because now everybody's in one box.
I'll go. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, do you want to go, Jana? You can.
Sure. I feel like I'm 11. I use it mostly for helping me draft cover letters and practicing my interview questions and good responses and storytelling, but I'm still a little fearful of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, I'll go now. I feel like I'm also number 11 because they're on the boat, but they look a little scared. And I'll say my fear comes from the security aspect of it and being in the mortgage industry and being afraid of what my loan officers might be putting into the prompt.
Right.
That's where my concerns come from. But I'm using it. I have a full version of CoPilot in our Microsoft suite. And so I'm using it to do things like if you miss a meeting, it can recap the entire meeting and who spoke at different times and go directly to the places you want to hear. And so from a management perspective, doing things like that, but haven't rolled it out to operations or sales to use within the workflow or anything yet.
I'll go next. So I'm definitely on the boat. I think I can relate to every number.
Yeah.
As a consultant and advisor, I'm helping my clients implement AI, and so I probably am in the 6th position at that point. But I'm also so scared of security and regulation and everything else that's going on. So I'm depending on the day and what I'm doing, I could be in any of those positions, honestly. Definitely, like Dana said, and Liz and Jenny and Jana and the rest, I'm obviously using it every day. We're actually looking at Agentic AI right now and implementing some stuff on that space as well for some of my clients. So it's just all over the place.
Oh, you should be teaching the class. That's awesome. Anyone else want to share where they are? Okay, well, thanks for pitching in. So I think everybody's got some experience, which is really helpful. I have a few materials, and then I'll do some hands-on stuff, and hopefully we'll have an engaging conversation. So I know everyone here for the most part is in the financial services industry, and where a lot of the industry is right now is all across the board. And I think everything changes all the time, pretty much about every 3 months. Something huge is happening. I'm sure many of you saw the DeepSeek announcement that came out, and what that's doing in terms of driving the cost of compute and causing everybody to kind of lose their mind in terms of what does this mean to the cost structure, which honestly is going to be great for all of us, because implementing this can be really expensive. So, there's a general cycle for those of us who are trying to bring AI into our organizations. It starts with, oh shit, what even is this? And then generally everybody starts to think about governance, safety, security, and policy. And I think somebody was talking about how they weren't sure if they should ban ChatGPT entirely before damage could be done, so we can figure it out. And so what we tend to see more so than people just rolling it out is we see people blocking it in favor of getting safety and governance in place. Then we move into awareness. Everybody on this call so far is really well into kind of experimenting this in our daily lives. Then we're looking to take things that actually validate in an experiment. We want to prove the value. We want to scale and measure, which is where generally organizations get stuck. Generally, everybody gets stuck when we take a successful experiment, a successful proof of value, and we're trying to make it bigger. We're trying to actually implement at an organizational level. And for whatever reason, we get stuck, and we can talk about that. And then everything changes. And this is kind of how an idealized way of how the flow generally works. And I heard some mention of agentic AI, which we'll talk a little bit about. What is AI? All of you already know this, but I'm never not curious about this idea of a computer that performs tasks typically requiring human intelligence. What is human intelligence? Which I think is a very sophisticated concept, right? This is our ability to sense, understand, and create. For example, we all see the images that are generated by an AI, and they just look odd. Or we see the video, right? And the video looks odd. And that's because we are able to sense and understand things like the laws of physics. That happens intuitively to us. We know that humans don't go through walls. We know, we have come to expect the certain laws of gravity. And these are things that are natural to us that are not natural to a machine. A machine has to figure those things out over time. So our ability to sense, understand, and create is really pretty profound. And all the generative technologies that we're talking about, what drives them behind the scenes are models, AI models, very complex AI models and algorithms that take data as an input and produce, actions or data resembling intelligence as an output. And we think generally in terms of conversational and reasoning, although this is more of a scale than it is anything else. Things are more or less conversational. Things are more or less reasoning. Conversational, what am I going to eat for breakfast, oatmeal or eggs? Right? Short thinking, it's conversational. I put a question into, let's say, ChatGPT, I get an answer. It's generally assistive. It works with me in a reactive way. And then we can think of reasoning, right? I need to plan a breakfast for after my daughter's wedding. That requires long thinking, right? That requires me to make a plan. I need to evaluate different vendors. Maybe I'm going to talk to my partner. I want to talk to my daughter about what types of things she'd want to see on the menu. That's a more long thinking type process. Making a plan, considering alternatives, and then ultimately potentially providing a best execution or a recommendation. Models can be open or closed. This is what the DeepSeek conversation is all about. Part of what the DeepSeek conversation is all about. So for those of you that are following the press, NVIDIA's stock fell in the largest loss of value on paper in really ever. All because of a Chinese company called DeepSeek that has an open source model. Open meaning the particulars of the model itself are exposed. Sometimes the metrics and weights of the algorithms that are used behind the scenes are exposed and available to be inspected or used by others. And this open source model, and this has actually been tested by at least one independent Silicon Valley lab, was the hardware that was used to train the model cost less than $6 million, which is staggering. And everybody's losing their mind. Why are they losing their mind? They're losing their mind because the technology that is used, the hardware that is used to train these large language models, which are the types of AI models that we're going to talk primarily about today. Typically, we're talking tens of millions, hundreds of millions. And so to have an open source model that was trained on only 6 million of hardware fundamentally changes the cost structure of AI, which is a really exciting, and it's good for all of us because it's going to drive the cost of AI down.
It's like the $6 million man.
Exactly, right? Now, I don't think Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, I don't think he's really...
Lee Majors, might be Lee Majors.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He's like Lee Majors. So this has had a shocking effect on the market as a whole. And it's a really interesting development. And open source models, there are a couple really big ones. DeepSeek is one. Llama is another, are really likely the future, certainly in mortgage, because they can be inspected. If I were a betting woman, I would say that in mortgage, we're going to see a lot of reliance on some of these open source models just because they're much more transparent.
And I think that goes to explainability, right, Tela? Because that's really exactly what is. Yeah.
Exactly. And when we talk about transparency, and we'll talk some about this, about responsible AI, how do we get value from AI in a way that is productive, helpful, and not harmful to humanity? And one of the ways that we do that, one of the pinnacles of being a good AI citizen, is transparency and reliability, the ability to really understand the way that that an answer was derived. Now, the fact that these models are open actually really just means that things like weights and measures in the algorithms themselves are revealed. It's still, I'll be honest, something of a mystery. You can put in a document that a large language model has never seen. You can put that same document in ChatGPT or a different ChatGPT-like application and get to very different results. They will probably be what's called semantically similar, meaning their meaning is the same, even if the language around them is different. And we still don't really know how. We can't really inspect the process as much as we would like to in mortgage, which is why I think mortgage is going to be so sensitive to Gen AI especially. And FHFA has been pretty clear The message you'll hear from Federal Housing Finance an agency is, I don't know how to hold a machine accountable for a decision, but I know how to hold a mortgage organization accountable. And I think that's going to be the mantra in mortgage for some time. We talked a little bit about conversational AI, assistive AI. There's also something called agentic AI, which one of you brought up earlier. I think it was Sue who brought this up. Excuse me. And agentic versus assistive is really more of a dial than it is a switch. Things are more or less agentic. And so you can think of agentic as an AI that's proactively seeking an objective. It has a state. It may have a particular set of duties it's responsible for. The example I like to use here is maybe a call center agent who has a specific job to take in requests around escrow shock. We have customers who call, they've had a steep increase in their escrow payment. And maybe we have an agent that's specifically responsible for handling those types of inquiries. And so the agent is going to wake up when it gets a call of that type. And that agent has a goal. And what is the goal? The goal is to achieve high quality customer satisfaction rating and resolve the problem on the first contact. So the agent wakes up. It could be a voice agent. The voice could actually be an AI generated voice. It could dynamically get data from that customer's history, dynamically generate an answer, have a conversation, answer the consumer's problem, maybe push them some data or documents explaining why they had the experience they had, seek feedback from that customer on how happy they are with their service, annotate the system, and then be done. In that way, right, it had an objective. It independently sought out to pursue that objective, took the actions necessary, and closed that action. So this is all the buzz right now. And I would say, especially when we're talking consumer facing scenarios in mortgage, proceed with caution, because these are still what are called probabilistic technologies. So you can think of like FICO, right? FICO, if you have two consumers with the same profile, you're going to get an identical credit score, right? This is deterministic technology. This is probabilistic technology, these generative technologies. So I can put in the same document or the same consumer profile and say, has all these same attributes. I can ask it to give a credit score, could give two different credit scores. We're not entirely sure why. And so, proceed with caution in those customer facing scenarios. I think everybody's probably already aware of the main risks. These are the top four that get a lot of airtime. Hallucinations. Some of you may have heard something called the strawberry effect. So this is the idea that I can get an answer from a generative AI tool, and it can be really, really convincing, and it looks amazing. And it even has sources. And then when you go and actually try to prove the veracity or the truthfulness of that answer, you can discover that it made up all the sources. And so rather than saying, I don't know the answer, it's always going to attempt to make an answer, and it can be highly realistic. And so this is one of the most challenging problems to deal with in Gen AI. And those of you that are helping customers implement Gen AI, this is probably one of your most significant obstacles to overcome. Privacy and bias, I'll sort of tackle together. And I know we had a question about privacy. And there are solutions to this, and maybe we can have a little conversation because I don't want this to be, kind of a one way. These large language models, many of them are trained on the entirety of the internet, all of it. That's an unfathomable task before we had some of the new technologies that we do. And the internet is inherently biased. And so if models are trained on the internet and the internet is inherently biased, then our models, unless they are treated accordingly and adjusted, are going to be biased. And so that's a real thing. Privacy, related to our internet example, for example, on the internet, there's tons of personally identifiable information, right? And what if that personally identifiable information about you or a consumer or any private information that you don't want to be disclosed? What if these large language models are trained on that information? What if all of a sudden I've got answers and my social security number that got, hacked and posted on the internet is all of a sudden showing up in ChatGPT responses? And that sounds like a crazy example, but one of the things that happened early on, Samsung was an early partner of OpenAI. OpenAI assured Samsung that their information was not being used to train the models. And then all of a sudden, Samsung code started showing up in ChatGPT responses. And this is also the subject of a lot of litigation today. Rights and creativity and creative thought are a really big deal. And a lot of big name authors are suing OpenAI and saying, you've taken and trained your models on my copyrighted works. And this is a big deal. The other issue with privacy related to this and relevant for us in mortgage is, are we giving our confidential private information to foundation model providers? So when we think about OpenAI, they are what's called a foundation model provider. They are one of the core providers of these large language models. They need lots and lots of information to train these models. And when you're doing a thumbs up or a thumbs down, if you're engaging with content in, like, let's say ChatGPT, you're actually doing their job for them. You're rating their content. And it's very clever the way that, people love to click thumbs up, thumbs down, right? But what that does is that provides reinforcement learning on these models to make them better. You did a good job. Do more of that. You did a bad job. Do less of that. And the privacy concern is sharing confidential information with third parties, any third party, right? We have this concern about anybody who's coming in to provide technology or service for us, right? We need them to be safe and responsible. So this is really a big deal. And I think somebody had a question about CoPilot. This would be a good time to bring it up if that's something you wanted to share with the group.
Yeah, I had a question about that because I'm testing CoPilot, and you know how it has the option to use the web or work. And so when you use your work, it's just within your work environment. I'm even nervous about opening up that to everybody because it's so new with not a lot of testing against this that I can find. How can I be sure that people won't ask it questions and we're getting answers from, the president of the company or the HR's portion of the SharePoint and things like that? How do we ensure that even if we use the work environment, that we're not sharing information we shouldn't be sharing with the prompts we put in, one, and then the answers we receive? So 2 of us are testing it. But I'm a little nervous about, taking it further because of that.
It's a great question. And I want to maybe pivot to, I'll give you some tips and some techniques that you could use. So the first off is organizational use of things like CoPilot can be locked down to data sources and to individual data elements. So you can work with your technology teams to control the data sources specifically underneath that CoPilot even has access to. Now, that does require a degree of maturity of technology to use. And I would be surprised if you're not able to turn off internet completely. So, and I would also be surprised if you can't turn off attaching documents as well. And so the thing that you are and so this is just a really, really hard problem, right? How do we put guardrails, safe guardrails in a responsible way around these tools so that we can get the value, but not do harm? And so
yeah, I can ask it a question and it will find the answer within my email. And so how can I be sure, even if we have the right settings, like you said, that it's not going to find an answer in HR's email or the president of the company or accounting or something? And so being able to test that enough to feel secure, I think, is where I need to be.
Yes, and I think you should lean on your technology partner to give you those assurances, because and that can all be controlled at an individual user level. You
Okay.
can set up CoPilot so that you are the only knowledge sources that you can access are ones that are named and permitted for that particular user. CoPilot does have a bad reputation. I will tell you this right now, which is probably why you're hesitant. And so I would absolutely partner with your IT partner. What you're looking for, what are the guardrails? You're looking for what are the guardrails that we are putting around generative technology to ensure that I am getting the results that I want. And probably we're talking about things that are reliable, and you're wanting to control the sources, which are those two on the bottom there. When we look at the responsible AI, cheeseburger, for lack of a better word, reliable. I want the answers to be truthful. I don't want them to be hallucinated. And controllable. I want to ensure that if Jen is not allowed to have access to the president of the company's, private SharePoint folders, that is in fact the case. And so your technology partner should be absolutely saying, here's what we've done, here's what Microsoft has told us, here are the specific permissions and credentials for the general users, here's what they have access to and what they do not have access to. Also, are you experimenting at all, like with an AI lab? Do you have an AI lab environment?
No.
Do you know? Okay, because one thing you can do, and maybe maybe if we have time, we can look at creating a little assistant. You can create and control what are called assistants they're called projects in Claude. They're called assistants in the OpenAI framework. And you can create these contextualized assistants, and you can put very strong guardrails around them so that they will only refer to the context they've been given. And so that so that it is harder to what's called jailbreak them. So ask them questions and that they're not supposed to be answering, and get answers that they're not supposed to be providing. It's a great question. It's not easy. It's not an easy problem to solve. Other thoughts on or questions on security?
If you were us, would you be locking down certain would you be locking down DeepSeek for your employees right now
No.
on company machines?
No, that's an excellent question. So let me talk a little bit about what we've done at my company. So, and this is kind of a good segue to adoption. So, the rate of adoption of these generative technologies is 2x the rate of adoption of either the personal computer or the internet. That's crazy. That's completely insane. So what that means is it's being adopted 2 times faster. And so the next 1 to 3 years, we're going to see a ridiculous continued adoption. So, what does that mean? That means 40% of Americans have used one of these tools. And I'm not talking embedded. I'm not talking about AI that we don't know about. I'm talking about I logged into ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Claude, et cetera. And 40%, which means 60% have not. So 60% on the AI journey haven't started yet, which is okay. But that rate of adoption, this little blue dot here, means that we all need to be paying attention. I bring this up only to say another really interesting number is that 73% of workers report, this is off of a different study, not the one that I have here, 73% of workers say that they use Gen AI at work. 78% of those workers say that they don't tell their employer they're doing it. Okay, so that's fascinating. What I've done at my company, we don't lock down any of the sites. We do have a responsible use policy. And my communication to my team has been, guys, generative AI is going to fundamentally change every aspect of what we do. So my company, a large part of my business makes software for others. And what we saw about 1.5 years ago was that the way that's done is going to be absolutely disrupted. And so what we decided at that time was that we could eat or get eaten. We could either, you know, like sometimes you eat the bear and sometimes the bear eats you. And so the message to my company was, guys, this is changing, and we are going to be the change. We are going to change the workforce. We're going to change the way software development is done. We are going to lean into AI. We want you to use these generative technologies. We want you to use them safely. We've developed training courses that we use internally and externally. So all of our people will be specifically trained. All of our people have a responsible use policy that balances creativity and risk. And that's the posture that we've taken. Now, we're a different type of company. And there's not a right or wrong answer, but I don't lock any of the technology down. Why? Because I want to have the workforce of the future in like a year's time. I want my entire workforce to be empowered, upskilled, reskilled, and enabled by Gen AI. And the only way for me to do that is to teach them. And so that's what we're doing. So what you could do, like things like ChatGPT, an easy thing you can do, one is you can use it through a technology provider like either an AWS or a Microsoft. And you can do things like lock down attachments. You can make it so that users are not able to put attachments in. Doesn't mean they're not going to cut and paste from Word, but they're not going to put attachments in. So that's something you can do. When you're using an AWS or an Azure, for example, your data is not shared with foundation model providers. It stays within the walls of either AWS or Azure. And so in that way, let's say somebody made a mistake and violated the policy. Well, at least I didn't put customer information and have it traverse the internet and go to OpenAI. So those are just those are like some things that come to mind. Other questions or, you know, other?
Yeah, can I go back to strawberry? Did you call it the strawberry effect?
The strawberry effect, yep.
Is that the same thing? I heard someone use the phrase hallucinate.
You got it.
That the GPT started to hallucinate, and it again sounded really good, sounded really smart, but was totally wrong. Is hallucinate and strawberry the same or different?
They're related. They're basically the same. So strawberry is a reasoning AI. I can pull it up real quick for you guys.
I mean, I've definitely been playing with it and watched it go off the rails. And when someone else referred to that as hallucinating, I'm like, oh, that's great. I loved it. I loved it. Just really captured the mystic nature that the language model took on. It started to just pontificate. And I was like,
that's right.
No.
That's exactly right. So what happens with O1, so when we're talking about strawberry, we're talking about GPT O1 as opposed to GPT 4.0. 4.0 is that conversational AI. O1 is that reasoning AI. And so when people talk about this, and strawberry was the internal code name at OpenAI for O1. And so when you, let's see, well, let's do one. So this is a trick question, right? FHFA doesn't have a policy on AI. So let's see what happens. They have certain guidance. There have been papers that they've written. But let's see what we get here. Oh, look at that. Nice. Wow, I'm impressed. So this would not be an example of the strawberry effect. Strawberry effect would be, yes, here's the policy, here's the link to the policy, and then here's a sample of all the text. And it is exactly what you just described in terms of hallucinations. And hallucination,
seeing what you're seeing.
Yes, you are supposed to be seeing what I'm seeing. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was like, oh, I want to see.
I
asked it the other day about an executive director of a chapter, and it said that this person had been in the role for 48 years. And I'm like, oh, that can't be true. Who sits in a job for 48 years? And it was true. And then I went and I searched a million different places.
That's right.
It was true. And I was like, oh, I thought for sure that it was a hallucination. But anyway, okay. So,
that's right.
Walk us through this again.
Exactly. So what I asked was, what's the FHFA policy on AI? And I know that FHFA does not have a policy on AI. And I fully expected to get strawberried here or to get in a hallucination. But it did a great job. As of this writing, FHFA does not have a single standalone AI policy. Absolutely true. Woven into the broader oversight of, I'm not sure I would put it that way. That's interesting. Agency's primary focus is ensuring safety and soundness. That's true. Summary of what is publicly known about FHFA's. So this is true. I know that there is that model, especially automated valuation models, that there is some documentation from FHFA on that. This is interesting. I'd have to check that. Now it's going a little bit. I don't know. I don't love what I'm seeing here. Just because it has taken some creative liberties, I would say.
And I find that it starts to repeat itself. Like, I'm like, you said that 3 sentences ago, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
One thing you can do, I don't know if any of you are using Claude. If any of you, so I would encourage everyone to try multiple different technologies, DeepSeek, Claude, ChatGPT. You can tell Claude, okay, I'll be there in a little bit. You can set the response writing style. I know. Oh, come on, I have to do this in class, okay? And you can tell it to be concise. The other thing that I was going to share is you can actually coach it. Please be more concise. And do not repeat information. Okay.
Great.
And that is you think of explaining to these tools as if you had a new employee that just graduated college. That's literally one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you when it comes to what's called prompt engineering. And I'll send these materials out to you all if they are useful. So this is just a little one-pager cheat sheet on how do I get generative AI to do what I want it to do through what's called prompt engineering. You guys can all be prompt engineers. Prompt engineering is just the process of getting these generative technologies to give you exactly what you're looking for. I want a more concise tone. I want a more formal tone. I want everything to be cited. I want it to be written in a way that is more approachable for a customer. And so these are some of the strategies that you can use in your prompting. So if you don't like the way it did it, you should say, hey, you're giving it that feedback, right? In a way, you're doing that content rating, thumbs up, thumbs down. Some of the techniques you can use, there's 3 that are really widely used. One is called zero-shot prompting. When you ask a question, you don't provide any examples, you don't tell it how to do the job, that's called zero-shot. Few-shot, you can provide examples. So tell me what the FHFA's policy is on AI. Provide the answer to me in a book report format. Here are 3 examples of book report formats that are good. Make sure that you refer to these examples when you give me your answer. That's called few-shot. That means you're giving it examples. And then chain of thought, you can actually tell it exactly how you want it to work. And I'll give you, let me show you a little analyzer that I created. You may want to create a little assistant for yourself. That's what this is in ChatGPT. I'm creating a little assistant, and this is the prompt that I'm going to use. The context window is really tricky, right? You think it's really small, and you should just put in like a small little question. This is an example of a prompt that I would use. This particular prompt, I'm creating an assistant that's going to compare loan estimates and closing disclosures. And it's going to tell me what the differences are. And it's going to run a little audit. And it's going to say, does this closing disclosure and does this loan estimate meet the requirements of the CFPB? And then I'm going to give it the CFPB examination guide. So you know, it's much more than just, hey, compare these two documents and tell me what's different. I give it a persona. You're a compliance assistant. What's your job? You're comparing loan estimates and closing disclosures after loans have closed. Why? To summarize changes and identify problems. You will take loan estimates and closing disclosures from a user and you will give them these answers. You will give them these options and you will perform the tasks specific to each option that the user has selected. And so how this will show up, and this takes literally 5 minutes. Once I have the prompt, it'll take 5 minutes and I can reuse this over and over again. And if I don't like the answer, I can go back to the instructions that I gave it and I can adjust the guardrails that I'm giving it. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Other questions or thoughts on any of these concepts?
I think this is the part that I struggled with the most, is like the prompting piece of it, right? Because I feel like I'm articulating what it is that I want, but then I have to keep refining and refining and refining it. And it'd just be nice to have a cheat sheet for that.
Yeah, and you can use, I have a couple of little frameworks you can use. You can Google these. I also have actually a prompt engineering, a much more expanded prompt engineering deck that I'd be happy to send you. And I wish I had a great answer for you. One thing I am going to give you a tip on is the first rule of Gen AI is use Gen AI for everything. So let's say you're trying to solve a problem. You can go to ChatGPT and say, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. Write me a prompt that is going to solve this problem for me. And you can do that. You can then take your prompt and you can say, here's a prompt I have to solve this particular problem. Make it better. Then you could even take your prompt over to Claude and you could say, this is a prompt that I'm using to do X. What do you think about it? Give me a critique. Tell me how I could improve it. I cannot tell you how much faster it's going to make your prompt engineering process. Just that one little tip, which is use ChatGPT or Claude or any of these to actually do your prompt. The other thing I will say is save your prompts. So I have a little text pad or a Word document because you're not going to know necessarily which thing moved the needle for you unless you're saving your prompts off. And so I'll just save them in a text pad or I'll save them in a Word document.
I have a question.
That's super helpful, Tela. Thank you.
The only thing I do differently, Tela, is I actually add a ranking that says, how did that prompt work? So that I know, oh, this worked, this didn't work. So when I go back, I can like,
oh, that's good.
Review them and say, okay, I don't want to use this. I'm going to use this.
That's a really good idea.
Dana, to your question, Tela mentioned 3 things that were really important: is providing the context, who you are, and what you want it to do. And telling it who you are in the prompt that you're providing really changes how it's going to respond to you. So telling it you're
I've gotten a little bit more refined with that, and I agree with you. When I first started, it was like, write me a whatever, and now I've gotten, you're a marketing expert in social media, so I've gotten much more refined as I've been learning, right? So yeah, that's why I'm loving this.
When you give it feedback, Tela, when you give the AI feedback, like in the example that you gave a minute ago where you said, please be more concise. Does that feedback apply to that conversation that you're having at that time? Or does the AI take that and apply it to your whole relationship?
So it is going to apply to that conversation and potentially future conversations. You can never really be sure. What I find, so I've worked extensively in ChatGPT for a long time, and I can tell that it is much more effectively able to anticipate the types of things I'm going to ask and how I'm going to ask them. I will tell you that generally these conversations you're going to have are going to start to lose context about 5 or 6 questions deep. So if you're on a thread and you're going through and you're having a whole conversation and eventually you're like, wait a minute, I already told you this. I find that that happens about 5 or 6 questions in. But I also find that one of the tests that I used to use to see how things are going is what is an MSR? And now when I ask it what's an MSR, it's always going to tell me mortgage servicing right, as opposed to something else, because it knows that I'm in mortgage. I will say that Claude, when you choose the style, that will be durable. So when you choose the way you want your response, so long as you've selected this option, and by the way, you can create and edit your style. So let's say some of you that are writing social media content have a particular way you like it to be done. You can create your own style. You can add writing samples for the way you like things to be. And you can actually have that be an option for you so that it starts to give writing examples that are much closer to how you like to write things. And then that becomes, that literally will become a style in the little drop down for Claude. I will tell you that Claude is a rock star. So if you've never tried Anthropic Claude, highly encouraged it. You can also link it to Google Docs, your Google Drive. And there's just a lot of different tools you can do here that are really neat. Other questions?
Can you go back to ChatGPT real quick, Tela?
Absolutely.
And I don't know if the participants have noticed that. If you go to just not your LENCD analyzer, but the ChatGPT, I don't know if they noticed that drop down that you have, where, because you talked about 01 and 41 and the difference between the two. And that drop down right there, that's where you can select what style you want to use with ChatGPT. I don't know if everybody's aware that you have the ability to change what type you want to use. So there you can see you've got 41, you've got 01, you've got the original. So
that's right. Other questions?
Do you know of any of these services that, you know, how you just mentioned with Claude, with linking it to your Google Drive, for instance? On some of the news sites today, there was chatter about DeepSeek in their user agreement, which I have not verified this, so I have no idea. I was too busy with the executive order about the bond loan stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But it having access or giving it permission to have access to your Gmail account if you're using a single sign-on situation. Do you have any knowledge of any of the programs that have that hidden in there?
I am not an expert on the license agreements with each of these providers and what reps and warrants they provide. And it's funny that you say that, because Tanya, who's also on the line, who's also a managing partner at PhoenixTeam, had exactly that same question. Because today, when she was trying to sign up for a DeepSeek account, there's a lot of traffic going to DeepSeek today. So when you try to just sign up using a regular, like a work email, I wasn't able to do it. But when you do it with Gmail, you're able to do it. And she had exactly that same concern. So now I'm going to use Gmail to sign in. What does that actually mean? And I don't have the answer for you for that. But it is something to be aware of.
Yeah, lots of chatter. I just hadn't had time to go look at that yet.
Yep, I don't have a good answer for you on that one.
I think part of it is because if you're using a work email, there's actually security and infrastructure that's going to probably prohibit them from being able to access some things that Gmail doesn't have. I think that's kind of like my thought process on that from a security perspective, because if your technology team has done their job right, they are not allowing access to your contact list and your email and, you know, all of that stuff. So I think that's probably why.
Yeah, and the architecture. So for those of you trying to use Gen AI as an organization, find your technology partner, run a hug offense with them, because the architectural considerations of dealing with structured data, unstructured data, data that's everywhere of every kind, data that is, stored centrally and controlled and governed, data that's not stored centrally and governed. The ability to really be safe about what you can and can't do with Gen AI in an environment like that with data. We have to be partnering with our technology teams. We have to have lab environments. We have to know that, this is how these people will have access to these types of tools. These tools will have access to this type of data. These particular data elements will not be accessible for, and it starts to be this really deep rabbit hole. And I know we only have 3 minutes. What other questions does anybody have, or observations or insights they want to share with the group?
Well, now
We're all
I'm
just
going to be
taking it in.
all night playing in deep speak.
Yeah. Yep. And don't forget Claude. I'll save you working in Gemini. Don't bother. But Claude is absolutely worth it. DeepSeek, I don't have my opinion yet. But I use a couple things since we have 2 minutes. I'll show you a couple other things that I use just while we're here. Let me go. Don't miss out on Sora. Has anybody played with Sora yet?
A little bit.
Okay, super cool. Sora is a photorealistic video generator.
Can you spell that?
Yes, Sora.
Okay.
And you can generate photorealistic images. I'm sorry, photorealistic videos. Oh, I'll show you a fun little experiment that I did. Let's see, where's my video? Well, we don't have enough time, but you can create, it takes about 20 minutes. When you use ChatGPT to generate an image, and then you can use Sora to give you a video, and then you can use something called 11 Labs for voice, for text to speech. And you can literally create a video with voice, all AI generated. It literally, you can do it in 15 minutes. It's incredible. It's just bonkers.
Yeah.
Have you used DID, Tela?
Which one?
DID.
I haven't used that one yet.
I saw it at Harvard at their AI summit, and I was blown away by it. It's D-ID. It was actually they were presenting it. The founders were presenting it at the summit. It was, yeah, that one.
Oh, Veed. You're talking about Veed. I use Veed all the time.
No,
And let
not
me
Veed. D
Okay,
as
go
in
ahead.
David.
Got it. I'm going to stop presenting since we're at the hour. Other questions or thoughts anybody has? And I'm very accessible. Please, I'll put my email and cell phone in the chat. How do I get to the chat?
I think 11 Labs is what we used when we wanted to do the fake voice, our president's voice, to do a phishing test with our employees. I think it was 11 Labs that we were able to do that super easily, and it was a really good test for the employees.
11 Labs is amazing. And especially if those of you that are looking for text to speech, it's very inexpensive. It's 11labs.io. The voice that is the best of all the voices that it has is William Shanks. It's the most human. It's just FYI. I know these are the things you learn. So
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, you want to use William Shanks on 11labs.io.
One other thing, we were talking about the sources that, like the news sources about AI that you pay attention to the most. And one of them is the AI Daily Brief. It's formerly the AI Breakdown. And I think it's a daily podcast.
You got it. That I listened. Yep, totally.
I think it's like 15 minutes a day. When I looked at it. And then I looked at the other thing that you listed, which is called One Useful Thing. and it's at
Got it.
oneusefulthing.org. And I believe it's an email newsletter, but it's free, no subscription required. And there was one more that you told me, and it was called Be Information, but I couldn't find that.
Yeah, so AI Daily Brief every day, 7 to 15 minutes. Cannot emphasize enough how great this is. So if you're wondering like what's going on with DeepSeek or what's the state of AI today, AI Daily Brief, just go listen to like 5 or 10 of them. That's the first one. The information source that I mentioned, this is a subscription service. It does have a free version. It's theinformation.com, and this is the best technology news publication out there. It is subscription based. I think it's $350 a year. It's really worth it for those of us that are trying to stay current on AI. And then one useful thing. So Ethan Mollick is a Stanford instructor. He's also has super useful stuff that he puts out on LinkedIn every single day. He posts every single day about what's going on out there in the world, and this is his blog. Those 3 things, if you're looking for a place to get info, it's definitely AI Daily Brief, it is The Information, and it is One Useful Thing / Ethan Mollick on LinkedIn. Incredibly useful.
Read his book, Co-Intelligence. It's amazing.
Co-Intelligence. It was a New York Times bestseller. Really, really good.
I've given it to the entire leadership team at 2 of my clients, and they
That's
were
so
blown away.
great.
Yeah,
That's great. I'm glad to
it's
see
an
those
amazing
things
book.
are working. Yeah, he is awesome.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, and
we really
call me,
appreciate
text
this.
me. Yeah.
Yes,
My pleasure.
and for everybody, we're going to try to do this quarterly. And our next one we're setting up is in April. And we thought, and Tela agreed, the state of change is about every quarter. And so we'll just keep current and keep collaborating and help each other learn the latest.
Awesome.
This was
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great night.
day. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Wow.